na udvigna chittaha vyasaneshu nisprihaha Shruteshu Drishteshu Guneshu Avastu Drik Danta Indriya Prana Sharira Dhihi Sada Prashanta Kamaha Rahita Asuraha Nodvigna Chitta Vyasaneshu Nispriha Shruteshu Drishteshu Gurneshva Vastu Drik Dantendriya Prana Sharira Dhi Sada Prashanta Kamo Rahita Suro Suraha Nudvigna Chitta Vyasaneshu Nispriha Shruteshu Drishteshu Guneshva Vastu Drik Dantendriya Prana Sharira Dhi Sada Prashanta Kamo Rahita Suro Suraha. Although Prahlada Maharaj was born in a family of Asuras, he himself was not an Asura but a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. Unlike the other Asuras, he was never envious of Vaishnavas. He was not agitated when put into danger, and he was neither directly nor indirectly interested in the fruitive activities described in the Vedas. Indeed, he considered everything material to be useless, and therefore he was completely devoid of material desires. He always controlled his senses and life air, and being of steady intelligence and determination, he subdued all lusty desires. Purport. From this verse we discover that a man is not qualified or disqualified simply by birth. Prahlada Maharaj was an Asura by birth, yet he possessed all the qualities of a perfect Brahmana. Brahmanya Shila Sampannaha. Anyone can become a fully qualified Brahmana under the direction of a spiritual master. Prahlada Maharaj provided a vivid example of how to think of the spiritual master and accept his directions calmly. In the first sentence of the translation, Srila Prabhupada definitively states that Prahlada Maharaj was not an Asura. Then he begins the next sentence by saying, unlike the other Asuras, which means counting him as an Asura. Srila Prabhupada says he was not an Asura but a great devotee of Lord Vishnu. There are Asuras and there are devotees. Dvo bhutau sargo loke smin daiva asura evacha Vishnu bhakta smrite daiva asuras tad viparyayaha. There are two kinds of people in this world, namely Asuras, demons, and godly people. The devotees of Vishnu, they are counted as godly people, and the demons are just the opposite. So if we say that, if we say a devotee is a demon, it's a very great offense. It's about the biggest offense you could make to a devotee is to say that he's a demon. Because devotee is a devotee because his whole consciousness is fully devoted to Krishna. And a demon is a demon because his consciousness is fully against Krishna. And the really great demons, like Hiranyakashipu, they are fully, consciously, committedly, constantly intensely, if you can remember all those adjectives, against Vishnu. So to call a devotee a demon is not only to deny his devotion, but to state that he's just the opposite. But in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna himself says, Prahladas chasmi daityanam, among the demons I am Prahlad. So Krishna himself says that Prahlad is a demon. So what's going on here? Well, he does say that among the demons I am Prahlad. And the word used is daitya, which is a little different from asura. Daitya means descendants of Diti, but generally the daityas are the asuras. Asura is also a technical term. Those who don't get the wine to drink, they don't get the somaras to drink. So is Prahlad a demon or not? If you say he's a demon, it's very offensive. If you say he's not, then you're contradicting Krishna, and that's also offensive. So then you have to become, what do? Become a Buddhist, something like that. It's not this, it's not that, and it's not this, it's not thisness, or it's neither this nor that, nor anything in between, or anything outside of that. But if you become a Buddhist, that's also offensive. So what are we going to do? Don't talk about Prahlad Maharaj? Well, it's right here in Srimad Bhagavatam, and we're supposed to recite the Srimad Bhagavatam. The term demon, asura, daitya, danava is sometimes also translated as demon. That may be used in different ways, and this is where the dilemma comes. What's the right word here? Dilemma. It's not really a dilemma. Here's where the confusion comes, because the term demon applies to the descendants of Diti generally. They're generally like that. They're all demons. But it also refers to someone who is committedly against Vishnu. And generally the two terms coincide. But in the case of Prahlad, he was an exception. So if we say that Prahlad is a demon, that's true in as much as he is born in a demoniac family. Just like if we say about most of the devotees in the room now that they're Russian, that's true. Probably, at least half Russian. But in another sense it's not true, because we're not the body, and especially when we're devotees, we're not supposed to see in terms of bodily designation. Srila Prabhupada begins his purport with the statement, from this verse we discover that a man is not qualified or disqualified simply by birth. Well, why does Srila Prabhupada state that? Well, because it's true, but Srila Prabhupada doesn't say, he doesn't write everything that's true in his books. He doesn't write everything that's true in his books. Now, that's not the same as saying that he writes untrue things in his book. But there are many true things which he doesn't write in his book. Just like, for instance, mango fruits come from mango trees. It's true. But Srila Prabhupada doesn't write it in his books. One reason is there's no need to, because Srila Prabhupada's not writing books on horticulture. But another reason is that, well, it's obvious. There's no reason to state it. In the winter, it is cold. In the summer, it is hot. There's no need to state it. It's true, but there's no need to state it. It's obvious. So obvious it's called a truism. Srila Prabhupada writes here, from this verse we discover that a man is not qualified or disqualified simply by birth, which suggests that it's not so obvious to everyone. Otherwise there wouldn't be any need to state it. Srila Prabhupada writes that we discover that a man is not qualified or disqualified simply by birth, which suggests that we are generally under the misunderstanding that a man is qualified or disqualified simply by birth. Well, in some senses it may be true that a man is qualified or disqualified by birth. For instance, someone born in Russia, as a Russian, they get Russian citizenship, and they're disqualified from taking up residence in the United States of America unless they go through some whole rigmarole which they might get permission or might not. So in that sense they're disqualified. And someone who's born in America is also not allowed to live in Russia. So there is some qualification by birth. Someone who's born with a short body which doesn't grow very tall, maybe only grows to be 5 feet tall, they're practically by that they're disqualified from becoming a basketball professional. Prabhupada writes, a man is not qualified simply by birth, but we find some people, they're very qualified just at birth in certain ways. For instance, the composer Mozart was said to, just without any training, musical training, the whole symphonies would come in his head and he'd write them down. He didn't have to take training to be one of the world's greatest musical composers. So what does it mean that a man is not qualified or disqualified by birth? Simply by birth. Materially there are distinctions between every person. The subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna and Krishna consciousness. So simply by birth one is not eligible or ineligible for Krishna consciousness. One may be born in a family of devotees and be a demon. The certain sons of Advaita Acharya, who's not just a devotee but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were demons. And we find that Prahlada Maharaj, although born from the greatest demon, was the greatest devotee. But generally it's expected that someone who's born in a family of devotees will be a devotee, and those who are born in a family of demons will be a demon. That is the generally it's like that, yeah. Therefore we may presume that someone who's born in a family of devotees must be a devotee. We may presume that someone who's born in a family of demons is a demon. But, as Srila Prabhupada writes here, a man is not qualified or disqualified simply by birth. Generally, it is so, or it may be so, because one takes birth in a particular situation according to one's past desires and qualifications or disqualifications. Karmana daiva netrena jantur deho papatyaye. According to one's previous activities and under the direction of the Supreme Lord and the demigods, a living being takes a particular kind of body. Shariram yadavapnoti yachchap yudkramatishvaraha grihit vaitani sangyati vaya gandha nivashayat. The consciousness that we have in one life is carried from one body to the next. So generally someone who has the demoniac consciousness will be placed in a situation which is suitable for further cultivating that demoniac consciousness. And someone who has devotional consciousness is placed in a situation where they can further develop that consciousness. But there may be exceptions also, as in the case of Prahlada Maharaj. And it may be also that someone is actually very demoniac by background, but by good association they can become a devotee, and vice versa. But birth is an important factor. Srila Prabhupada writes in one purport that to be a pure devotee, to become a pure devotee, there are two major factors. One is to be born into a family of devotees, and another is to have the guidance from a proper spiritual master. And we find in Srimad Bhagavatam and the writings of so many great devotees, the prayers for what shall be my future birth. For instance, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur states, Kirta janma hau jathathu adas, bahimokha brahma janme nahi more ash. That let me be born as an insect, if I can somehow or other in that situation be your servant, but I have no desire to be Brahma if I'm inimical to you. So birth is important. but it's not essential, which for most of us is pleasing to hear, as most of us were born in demoniac families. If we study according to the standards of Shastra, it may not be that our parents were making plans to harass the whole universe as was Hiranyakashipu. Probably most of our parents were not outstandingly demoniac, but due to bad association, the culture that they were born into, they presumed eating meat, slaughterhouses, intoxication, all these things to be normal. So by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and his representatives, we've been able to become reborn. Generally on Janmashtami, when I speak formally like this, I tell devotees, today is also my birthday. And devotees become surprised. And just like last year, I said, now I'm 41 years old. And they're trying to work it out, because you look older than that. That was my spiritual birthday, real birth. After so many births in this material world, finally got the opportunity to take birth spiritually. But the very fact that birth is a factor, generally a factor in our spiritual disposition, is clear from the very fact that we are come together here in India. Now, it's not the birth that makes someone pious or impious. It's their previous pious or impious activities that they take birth in such a situation. It's not some kind of roulette. Yeah, okay. Generally, people of pious disposition take birth in this land. Pious means minimally that they're inclined to follow Krishna's Vedic culture. Krishna's Vedic culture is very much run down at the present time, and personally in this life I've seen how it's fallen down so much, and I'm regularly horrified at how bad it's getting, worse and worse and worse. But still, when I go overseas, especially to Europe and America, then I can appreciate actually the culture is so much better here for Krishna consciousness. Mayapur is the capital of the spiritual India. The whole land is blessed by Krishna, Rama, various avatars have appeared here. So many great devotees have purified this land by their lotus feet and by their instructions and their very presence, so that in general people born in this land, they have a much better predisposition to Krishna consciousness than people born in other places. Srila Prabhupada writes that especially in India, the Varnashram system can easily be revived at any time. So that's another definition of Deva and Asura. Deva, is a godly person, pious person, is someone who follows Krishna's Vedic culture. And a demon is someone who rejects that culture, or who superficially follows it. Superficial means that the purpose of purification is not the reason that they follow the culture. We see that many demons, just like Duryodhana, he superficially followed the Varnashram culture. Jarasandha was a worshipper of Vishnu, but he was against Krishna. What is that? How is that possible? That means that he would worship Shalagram Shila, but when Krishna, personally, he was against him. So it was only a superficial worship. There may be people who superficially very reverentially worship the deity of Vishnu, but then they declare him to be not, the deity to be not actually Vishnu, and that ultimately God is impersonal. So it's, the basic division is there into godly and ungodly, or godly and demoniac. But in this material world, with the exception of great pure devotees like Prahlada, those who are godly, they're also partake, at least to some extent, of the demoniac nature. Otherwise we wouldn't be in this material world. And demons, they may also, given the opportunity, they may not often have the opportunity, but they may also take to Krishna consciousness or do something favorable for Krishna consciousness. Now in the Bhagavad-gita we find the qualities of the godly people are stated. Abhayam sattva sangshrutya jnana yoga vevastati. And then the demoniac qualities are stated. Dambho darpo vimanascha krodha parisham evacha ajnana chabijatasya partha sampadam asurim. The demoniac qualities are born with the person. The godly qualities are born with the person. But it may be that some godless people or demons, they also exhibit some apparently godly qualities. For instance, we see that Hiranyakashipu was inclined to be very affectionate toward his son Prahlada. He wanted Prahlada to be a good demon. He wanted that Prahlada will learn in the school how to be a first-class demon. Hiranyakashipu's motive was that, well, I want to help my child. I want to do what's best for my child. He was affectionate to his child. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, this kind of affection is not considered godly. Or any supposedly good quality, if it's not connected with Krishna, it's not considered to be actually a very good quality. For instance, we might find that someone is very interested in helping the poor by building schools or hospitals to treat the poor people. And that might seem, well, that's very good. But according to Srimad Bhagavatam, it's not very good. It might be good, but not very good. Just like we find that even among the animals, they cooperate and help each other. It doesn't make them saints. The nature of this material world is that if we try to help one class of people, then another class of people become disadvantaged. And any help that we may do to someone, if it's not actually helping them to come close to Krishna, it's an illusory kind of help, so it's actually the opposite of helping them. For instance, if we promote the idea that the poor should be uplifted, but what does that uplift mean? That means that they go toward their next death in a less poverty-stricken position than they would have been. But still they have to die. So real benefit for them is to give them the knowledge by which they can act in such a way that they can get free from death. And we're not against the idea of helping people in the sense of economically, but that's not the full way to help them. In fact, in the context of the modern world, the whole idea of economic improvement means to work hard to get all kinds of things that you don't really need. Money, everything is judged in terms of money. You have to have enough money to live. But actually in a properly civilized society, that is not there. In Varnashram society, it's not that you earn a living. In most people, they don't earn money. Simply you have to do your duty and then you're provided for. That's all. Just like the barber, he goes to around once or twice a month and cuts everyone's hair and nails and everything. And at the time of harvest, he's given so many bags of rice And then at a wedding he'll be given some cloth, and his needs are taken care of. It is the duty of the kings to see that everyone is taken care of, and not by giving them money so they can spend it on intoxication. So it's a very different approach to life altogether. When money is made the basis of society, then it must become demoniac, because the basis of society is that everyone should act according to dharma. When the basis is made money, then everyone just has to work, and it's competition. So we find at the entrance here there's a notice, part-time Bhakti Shastri course for busy Mayapur residents. Well, you come here so you can have time for doing things like Bhakti Shastri. But so many are busy for the same thing that they left the big bad world out there, to get enough money. And when society is based on money, then envy comes. You may say, well, in Varnashram society, someone's rich and someone's poor. But the understanding is also there, that according to my previous activities, I'm in such and such a situation. Someone else is in a different situation. And the Brahmanas especially, they prefer to be poor. They like to be poor. Poor, P-O-O-R. Because they consider that to have anything more than they need is an obstruction in their spiritual advancement. And even materially, it's just a nuisance. If you have more than you need, then you're diverted into looking after this and that which you don't actually need. Srila Prabhupada said once about the brahmacharis and sannyasis in India, they would just wear a loincloth just for social convention. There's no need for anything more. And he said grihastas, they may dress gorgeously, but for the brahmacharis and sannyasis, just absolute minimum. Until very recently, in India, it used to be that children, they wouldn't be clothed until about the age of 7 or 8, something like that. Maybe older. They'd just run around naked. With just a string around their waist. Now all the people have to buy clothes every 6 months for their kids. Every 6 months, because they grow out of the clothes. And they have to pay for their TV and their cell phone and so many unnecessary necessities. Now the whole society is demoniac. A society that promotes you to work hard, to buy things that you don't need, is demoniac. And even though we're fortunate to be chanting Hare Krishna, culturally we're very much trapped in this demoniac society. Srila Prabhupada had this revolutionary plan of Varnashram community to live without all these artificial necessities. Live very simply and chant Hare Krishna. For many of our devotees, they can't even imagine that. They think it sounds horrible. Even to talk about this is likely to get banned. Well, definitely to write books about it is banned. And even some who try to do it, they find, it's just too... how can we live without electricity? Horrible. Not considering that until a short time ago, most of the world, and still a lot of the world, doesn't have electricity at all. I think in Russia it came in about 1930s, quite earlier. Electrified all of Russia. So you don't have any experience of that. But in India, until a short time ago, most of the country didn't have any electrical connection. And even those places which did have electrical connection, you'd see the electric wire, but there'd be no current in it most of the time. And you go to so many places, the people, they'd never seen electric light, electric fan, running water, TV. They never imagined such. And in the 1980s, when there was a lot of electrification in the villages, and then people were getting TVs, on book distribution, traveling book distribution, our devotees, just by going to a place, they could understand whether they got electricity. That means a regular supply of electricity, so they could have TVs, whether they got it or not. Because if they didn't have electricity and TVs, there'd be noticeably much better than those who did have it. So via the TV, via the education system, via the whole culture, we're pumped full of demoniac culture from the moment, even from before we're born. Now, Prahlada was born into such a culture, but his program was one of peaceful non-cooperation. Mahatma Gandhi's policy, that you don't cooperate and you don't fight either. But Prahlada, by not cooperating with Hiranyakashipu, he brought out he actually demonstrated, or he brought out the demoniacness, the demonism of Hiranyakashipu to the ultimate extent. How bad can a demon be? You may not understand until you try to take away their sense gratification. Often we may find that people, they're basically quite nice, but then if you try to restrict their sense gratification, then you'll see. Just many years ago, I was in Denmark, where people are generally very nice. The government makes sure that everyone has enough money for their basic sense needs and sense gratification. We met one teacher there. She became a devotee, and she said this was actually it was late 1970s, and she told us that in the schools it's normal that the children have sex with the teachers. Incidentally, there are more pigs than humans in Denmark. It's the mainstay of their economy. Danish bacon. At least here in India, people don't know what bacon is. You probably forgot what it is also. So anyway, one time we were hitchhiking a ride to go from one town to the next. And a young man and a young woman picked us up. So we were telling them about Krishna consciousness. And then I said, and we're vegetarian. And the man became, we didn't say anything. We didn't say you should be a vegetarian or meat eating is wrong. Just when he became very upset. He said, I don't want anyone telling me what I should eat. I didn't tell him anything what he should eat. I just said we're vegetarian, that's all. But he got so upset. So just the idea that, someone, they're very nice, but then if just even a hint that we might be trying to stop your sense gratification, then become very upset. So we may also be tested. Now we're living somehow or other fairly comfortably. One time, it must have been 1976, there was a lot of pressure in the United States of America on our movement. There were court cases against our movement. And devotees, they were very perturbed. And Srila Prabhupada said, he didn't seem to think it was a very big thing. He said, the time will come when they will fire on you, they will shoot you. He said, you have to be ready for that. But no, they're not going to shoot us now. Because we didn't keep up the pressure. We adjusted to the modern society. And so they're happy. You do your Hare Krishna and you adjust to our society and just keep quiet in the corner. Okay. But actually if we preach as what Prabhupada preached and what the Shastras preached, then definitely demoniac people are going to become disturbed. And I'm over time. I wasn't seeing the watch. So we're supposed to go for the temple, right? Hare Krishna. Much more to say, but no time now. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.